I stumbled upon 7 haunted treasures in the woods that should have stayed buried. I never should have opened that door. It was just a rusty old shed, tucked away under a thick layer of vines and shadows. My friends dared me. A stupid dare. I thought I'd find some old tools or forgotten junk. But what I found filled me with dread. Cold fingers of fear wrapped around my spine, tightening with every creak of the door. The scent of damp earth hit me first, earthy and rich. A chill ran through me as I stepped inside, my breath hitching. The darkness was thick, suffocating. I could almost swear I heard whispers, low and sinister, echoing around me. Shadows darted across the corners of my vision, just out of reach. I squinted. The dim light did nothing to fight off the fear pressing against my chest. Then, I saw it. A glimmer in the corner. A rusty box, ornate and uninviting, sitting like a lost secret. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the cold metal, and suddenly the air shifted. The whispers steadied, growing louder. Each breath I took felt heavier, as if the very atmosphere was pulling me down. I could almost taste the fear, a coppery, metallic tang that made my heart race. I stepped back. My instincts screamed at me to leave. But curiosity clawed at me. Out of the corner of my eye, something moved. A cold, soft breeze brushed across my neck, sending chills down my spine. I whirled around, but there was nothing, just the echoing silence that pressed in tighter. I took a shaky breath, my heart pounding, as I felt the temperature drop. Why was it so cold? Why was I still here? Then came the noises. A low thud, like something heavy shifting in the shadows. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure it echoed in the room. I backed away, the box still glinting in the half-light like a beacon of horror. What secrets lay within? What treasures wanted to be uncovered? And what cursed spirits would awaken should I pry open that box? I hesitated. A sudden crash jolted me from my thoughts. The door slammed shut, and I was enveloped in darkness. Panic surged, a swirling tide of terror washing over me. I was not alone, I was trapped. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the echo of the slamming door faded into the oppressive silence, the darkness closed in around me, consuming my senses. I pressed my back against the cold, damp wall, every nerve ending screaming for me to flee. The suffocating gloom felt almost alive, pulsating with a malignant energy that seeped into my skin. I listened intently, straining to hear anything beyond my own ragged breathing. Then, the whispers returned, louder this time, swirling around me like a tempest of despair. They were no longer just disembodied voices, they were words, fragmented and chilling, spilling from a realm I couldn't comprehend. Leave, seek revenge. Each syllable seemed layered with centuries of anguish, twisting my gut in dread. My heart pounded with a primal fear, every beat like a harsh judgment against my curiosity. That I cast my eyes back to the box. It was almost luminous now, a malevolent glow emanating from it as if it were breathing, waiting. My hand quivered as I reached for it, drawn in by an invisible force. Just as my fingers brushed against it, a bone-chilling laugh erupted behind me, echoing through the darkness. It was guttural, mocking like the crackling of dry leaves underfoot, but filled with vile mirth. I whipped around, searching desperately for the source, but there was nothing. Just shadows pressing in on all sides, closing tighter and tighter. In sheer panic, I grabbed the box and heaved it toward the far wall, where it clattered and rolled, but the laughter only intensified. Unseen fingers grasped for me out of the shadows, a brush against my arm as icy as the depths of the forest itself. I felt an urge, a force compelling me to dive into the box. My mind screamed against it, but my body moved as if it had a will of its own, and I stumbled forward, peering into the darkness. Inside the box, I saw a collection of trinkets, each one grotesque and twisted in its own right. A tiny doll with hair matted and wild, her eyes hollow and unspeakably sad, a rusted key that seemed to pulsate, its metal reaching out to me with a yearning that made my skin crawl, and a battered photograph, its edges singed, revealed faint images of people staring back at me, their faces contorted in horror. A name whispered to me from the depths of the box, the vowels and consonants tearing at my sanity. Miriam. In that moment, the temperature plummeted further, and the shadows coalesced into a form of figure, dark and indistinct, yet brazenly insistent. Its features were blurred, shrouded in a mist that obscured its sadness, but its eyes, two smoldering embers, bore into my soul, demanding recognition. My breath hitched, the echo of a deep longing rolled over me. I stumbled backward, heart racing as my mind traced the jagged edges of terror. "What do you want?" I gasped, my voice quivering. The shadows shifted, whispering around me like a frenzied henchman of despair. I couldn't stay here. I had to escape, but there was no way out. Each corner seemed to curl inward. The figure moved closer, the space growing colder still. I could see its mouth move, phonating in a way that sent shockwaves of pain through me. The laughter dripped with menace, mocking my fear, but in its chaos I discerned a single syllable. "Find." Suddenly, a fierce wind erupted from nowhere, spiraling throughout the shack, tossing the treasures within the box like autumn leaves. The walls shook violently, and in my panic, I gathered the scattered items, gripping each one with manic zeal, desperate to understand their connection to what surrounded me, to the malevolent force that stalked me in the shadows. With each object I touched, memories flooded in, visions of the past spun in gruesome displays, and voices from the beyond dug their claws deep into my psyche. Then their desires mingled with my own as I felt an uncontrollable pull toward what the figure wanted. Each heartbeat stretched, making me aware that the line between past and present was fraying, and I was standing on the precipice. That I turned to confront the figure, the weight of the trinkets in my hands anchoring me to this nightmare, when I felt the presence surge behind me. It was hot, malignant tendrils creeping along my skin. I was not just confined in that shed, I was ensnared in a tapestry woven from the desires of the cursed spirits. And then I heard her voice, sharp like glass, whispering from the depths of my shattered mind. "You shouldn't have come here, you shouldn't have opened the box." I froze, paralyzed in horror, and as I turned slowly, the heartbeat of the darkness pulsed louder and louder, until everything turned white. Then I was falling, or was it the room collapsing around me? The threads of reality began to unravel, and all at once I was blind, temporal echoes drowning me. I couldn't breathe. And from the swirling void, I felt her presence again, colder, sharper. I gasped in realization as a familiar name slipped from my lips. "Miriam." In that instant, something colder than death grasped my throat, teaching me how futile it was to resist. The treasure wasn't in the box, but in the torment I had unearthed. And as the laughter boiled beneath the surface, echoing like the breaking of tortured souls, everything went dark. A scream echoed from somewhere deep within, only to be swallowed by the oppressive silencia, silence poised on the brink of an unspeakable return. The stillness that followed felt thick as tar, clinging to my lungs and forcing me to gasp for breath. I opened my eyes to a vast expanse that was not the shed I had anticipated, but a desolate landscape blanketed in an unsettling fog. The air was heavy, stifling, clouded with whispers, like distant lamentations wafting through an unseen forest of shadows. "Miriam." The name pulsated through my mind, an incantation of urgency. I staggered forward, feet dragging through the murky ground, unsure of where I was headed. The fog thickened, swirling as if it were alive, weaving between my legs and curling around my body like spectral serpents. I stumbled and fell to my knees, the earth cold and damp beneath me. As I rose, the insistent whispering returned, each voice a shard of anguish, spun into a web of despair. "Find," echoed many voices, twisting and rising in a haunting crescendo, pulling at threads in my memory. I staggered and wove through the eerie mist, trying to find clarity among the chaos. But each step led me deeper into darkness. Suddenly, I felt a shift just beyond my periphery, a flicker of movement in the haze. I turned sharply, and a figure emerged, faintly illuminated by an otherworldly glow. She was ethereal, draped in threads of smoke that danced and swirled around her. Her face was familiar yet warped, a reflection of horror etched in lines of pain. Miriam? The question clawed its way from my throat, but before I could utter a sound, she raised a hand, the gesture making me freeze. Help me. Her voice was a silken rasp, laced with desperation that made my skin prickle. You shouldn't have come. What do you mean? I stammered, dread coiling around my heart. The box, she faltered, eyes shimmering with a mixture of pleading and horror. It binds us, but it can also free us. You must. Before she could finish, the ground beneath us trembled violently, and dark fissures cracked open, releasing tendrils of smoke that spiraled outwards, coiling around our feet like hungry vipers. The whispering escalated, filling the air with a cacophony of sorrow. Leave, seek revenge, they screamed, fingers of loss curling around me, and I stumbled back, panic surging through me like electricity. Miriam. I shouted, but she had vanished, swallowed by the fog once more. I was alone, and the realization of the isolation wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud. My mind raced back to the box, its treacherous treasures and the connection I could not yet comprehend. What had I unleashed? A cacophony of cries erupted, jarring me from my thoughts. I turned, and a spectral procession emerged from the mist, horrible visages etched with despair and fury. Faces I could recognize, twisted in torment, eyes black with malice and anguish. They stepped forward, each dragging their own sorrow behind them like ink spilling from an overturned pen. Help us, one wailed, desperation clawing at their voice. We are bound to the box, you must understand. It is feeding, it has awakened unspeakable things. That I stumbled backward, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. The treasures from the box weren't just artifacts, they were relics of the damned, each one a soul writhing in its own narrative of misery. I could feel their pain, a visceral connection that pulsed in sync with my own heartbeat, fueling my dread. Find it. They cried in unison, their voices erupting into a chorus that seemed to resonate with loathsome power. Release us. Free, free. I echoed, my voice thin in the thickening ether. A startling thought ignited in my mind: a way out. If I could reclaim the treasures, perhaps I could sever the bonds that held these spirits captive, but my heart thudded with the weight of fear. What else lurked within the shroud of malevolence? The ground trembled violently again, throwing me to the side. I scrambled up, desperately glancing around, when suddenly a heavy hand clamped down on my shoulder. I spun to face a new form, a figure cloaked in shadows, their features shrouded in darkness. An unmistakable pulse of malevolence radiated off of them, the darkness mustering all its strength to siphon my will. Leave, the figure said, voice like the grinding of bones. You do not belong here. I stumbled back, heart hammering, as the cacophony rose, spirits crying out in a tumultuous frenzy, their desperation mingling with the darkness. Everything spun, I had become the eye of the storm, and in that moment of chaos, something coalesced behind me like a storm cloud, expanding, yawning wide as if to devour the very light around me, and then, in a deafening roar that silenced the whispers, I saw it, a spectral maw torn from the very fabric of reality, hungry, howling for its next victim. As the darkness surged forth with an insatiable thirst, I realized with horror that my very essence was the final key to unlock its unholy banquet. With a scream that split the air, I turned, not towards escape but towards a world that was waiting to consume me whole, becoming the portal through which unearthly terror would manifest. In that moment, the air crackled with acrid energy, and all I could do was watch as the abyss beckoned me closer to its wretched embrace. And just as the shadows wrapped around me, I felt a tug at my soul, a tether pulling me between fear and fate. The fog began to recede, and in the maddening clarity that followed, I caught sight of a new figure, Miriam, but this time transformed, her eyes burning with a rage that eclipsed even the darkness surrounding us. Find me, she hissed, and in that moment, I understood the true horror. The hunt was only just beginning. The ground roared beneath me, a living, breathing entity that craved flesh. The spectral maw loomed ominously, the darkness wrapping greedily around me, pulling me closer to its gaping void. Breathless, I flailed backward, desperate to escape the insatiable shadows that threatened to swallow me whole. The air shimmered, and the fog reassembled, obscuring the sinister entity for just a moment. In that fleeting instant of clarity, dread spiked through my veins. Miriam's voice, she was still there, lurking within the darkness. "Find me," she urged, her words a siren song that lured me deeper into despair. With every passing heartbeat, the urgency of her plea cemented itself in my core. I lunged forward, driven not only by fear but by an instinct deeper than reason. The air turned frigid, a biting chill settling like iron on my bones. I pressed onward through the fog, each step sinking me further into the wretched heart of this cursed realm. Shapes flickered in the corner of my vision, memories twisted into grotesque forms of those I had lost. Faces of loved ones twisted by sorrow, shadows of regret staining the very essence of their beings. With each anguished cry that slashed through the silence, I felt the weight of my own guilt, an invisible chain that threatened to pull me under. "Help us," they begged, a mournful chorus that echoed in the marrow of my bones, weaving their sorrow into a tapestry of despair. Yet amidst all the chaos, I could still perceive that flicker of the familiar, Miriam's presence grounding me, a beacon in the void. I willed myself to ignore the voices that ceased to be mine, choosing instead to heed her call. "Where are you?" I whispered into the suffocating mist, as though the darkness itself might answer. From the very depths, the fog coalesced, forming new terror, each tendril caressing my skin like icy fingers. The spectral procession began to swirl, a whirlwind of wandering souls drawn to my flickering flame of life. Their faces twisted into macabre masks of longing, fingers clawing at my arms, desperately attempting to harness my warmth. "Release us." Their cries rose again, a discordant symphony that built into a riot of desperation. I felt the straining pull of my heartstrings, vibrating in rhythm with the pulse of the anguish surrounding me. "You are the key!" A voice screamed, rising above the cacophony, flooding my mind with visions, whispers of the box, pulsating with ominous intent. The realization hit like ice water. I could either yield and become part of their regret, or I could fight. I could harness the very treasure that had summoned me to this unforgiving abyss. The box, that cursed artifact, held not merely wealth, but the essence of those whose anguish it had feasted upon. Yet could freeing them equate to my salvation, or was it merely trapping me deeper into the echoes of their misery? "Find me, finish this." Miriam's voice cut through the fog and despair like a dagger, igniting a flicker of hope amidst the suffocating gloom. I turned sharply, struggling to remember the last place I had glimpsed her through the spectral haze. Shadows coiled around my ankles, reluctantly releasing me as I sprinted deeper into the fog, the whispers blurring into a sinister murmur that threatened to engulf me whole. The air hung heavy, every breath a battle against the oppressive atmosphere that bled despair. I could feel their eyes upon Metho's bound souls lurking just beyond, impatient and filled with longing. Their anguish was a symphony of chaos, each note piercing through the haze, taunting me with the specter of failure. The sensations pulsed around me, rising to a deafening crescendo, when I finally caught sight of ancient, warped trees, their gnarled roots straining upward like accusing fingers towards the sky. I had heard tales of these trees, woven into the myths of my childhood, each one believed to stand as a guardian over secrets buried for eternity. Knowing I had little time left, I pressed on towards the heart of this mist-laden forest. The trees loomed like sentinels, their twisted forms beckoning me closer. Through the trembling branches, glimpses of moonlight pierced the fog, revealing gleaming objects scattered across the ground, treasures from the box. I couldn't say, but a pull surged through me. A warmth intermingled with the encroaching chill, urging me to retrieve what lay dormant beneath the festered soil. Just as my fingers brushed against the cold, hard surface of a glimmering relic, a thunderous crack echoed through the shroud, and the ground beneath me erupted. A formless amalgamation surged forth, swallowing the treasures in an instant, sparking a brilliant flash of light that momentarily illuminated the despair surrounding me, and then, silence. The whispers faded into an unnatural quietness that weighed upon me with unbearable pressure. I stood there, heart racing, breath caught in my throat. My trembling hand hung in the air, hovering over the now empty space where the treasure had been. But before relief could squash my dread, the fog coiled and twisted as if infused with dark life once more. I was no longer alone. Faces emerged warped and familiar, bearing a grin that consumed their entire being. Miriam's voice resounded amidst them, not in desperation but in mocking triumph as she descended from the shadows, swirling in an ethereal haze of smoke and fury. The darkness-bearing souls tangled within the fog encroached upon me, feeding off my confusion. "Did you think you could escape?" Her eyes gleamed, radiating with a malevolence that ignited my soul. "You were meant to join us. Welcome to your reckoning." Distrust and horror curled around me like a serpent, tightening its grip as the oppressive energy grew heavier, knots of despair strangling any flicker of hope that inhabited my chest, and suddenly, I was enveloped by them, horrific, wretched figures gazing upon me with disgust and longing, refusing to let me breathe, let alone escape. Shadows surrounded me, obscuring any thought of flight, whispering dreadful truths in my ear. No redemption lay ahead. As I struggled, the slithering bind tightened, pulling me into a horde of darkness when the last of Miriam's words rang through the void, "You have already chosen your fate." And with that, everything went black. The darkness enveloped me, a suffocating shroud that clung to my skin like the cold perspiration that dripped down my neck. I could feel the pressure swirling around my body, thick and viscous, claws of regret pulling me deeper into the shadows. The Herculean weight of despair made it impossible to see or breathe, allowing panic to seep into my bones. "Let go," a chorus crooned, twisted breath wrapping around my ears like a sickly sweet lullaby. I clamped my eyes shut, resisting the tug of their sorrowful groans. For mere seconds, I floated in a void, suspended between life and something profoundly darker. The air thickened, and I felt the prickle of something against my skin, a chill that hinted at the grotesque forms encircling me, hungry specters that longed for flesh, for warmth. Suddenly, there was light, a weak, flickering glow that ignited my senses and broke the paralysis of despair. I was falling through layers of dread, glimmering shards of reality slicing through the darkness. As I descended, I could hear a distant thudding. It was terrifyingly rhythmic, like a heartbeat, pulsating as if it heralded my demise. Then, with a crash that splintered the night, I landed ungracefully in the damp earth of what felt like a forgotten sanctum, illuminated by eerie phosphorescent fungi crawling on the roots of parched trees. The air here was different, tinged with the scent of decay and an unsettling undertone of something warmer, something living, though it shouldn't be. Around me lay the remnants of forgotten treasures, scattered like bones across the loamy earth. Rusting coins glimmered faintly, alongside age-old artifacts that held an essence, a memory of their past. In my immediate vicinity, I spotted a rusted locket, the image within tarnished beyond recognition but strangely magnetic. It pulsed with a life of its own, calling me closer, but I had learned better. Miriam's laughter echoed in the periphery of my mind, mingled with the sickening cacophony of the lost souls. I dared not touch anything, remembering too well the grip of their despair. As if provoked by my hesitation, the shadows began to dance around me, coalescing with the frenetic pulse of the luminescent fungi. "No one leaves this place without a price," they chorused, their hollowed eyes locking onto me, pleading and enraged all at once. They clawed at the air, shifting ever closer, their forms ebbing and flowing, giving shape to my deepest fears and regrets. I could feel their yearning, it thrummed through my bones, climbing higher with each second, feeding off my terror. Then it happened. The voice that had once been Miriam's now morphed, twisting grotesquely. "You think you can resist? You know what you must do," it crooned, luring me still deeper into the realm of the cursed. "What must I do?" The question burned in my mind, linking me irrevocably to this darkness. I remembered the box, what had compelled me to this nightmare. It had awakened them, a gateway. I focused on that, the reasons behind my journey, the hope of salvation, the chance to endure beyond my own mortality. But all hope seemed to crumble into dust with the weight of the relentless presence bearing down upon me. An oppressive silence suddenly fell, and then the pulsating glow from the fungi dimmed. My heart raced as I turned, searching frantically for an escape from their clutches. But the shadows began to swirl more violently, and the cold fingers of dread sent tremors spiraling through my body. There, at the very edge of my vision, a larger figure manifested, a mass of shadow bound together with the voices of anguish, a reaper of souls, an executor of fates, deliver what is owed, it rasped from a throat that did not breathe, each word a dagger slicing through the tension-filled silence. In that moment, I felt the very essence of the darkness anchoring me, constricting my thoughts, dragging them toward surrender. Before I could grasp the situation, the ground under my feet began to shift, swallowing the treasures and secrets I fought to ignore. The relics I had once found alluring began to crawl with life, bones clattering, dormant entities awakening, responding to the call of their mate. In that harrowing instant, I comprehended the truth: they were alive, and they craved the warmth I could provide. Miriam's laughter echoed sharply as the shadows leered at me, their grotesque mouths twisted with intent. "Join us," they urged with seductive whispers, gentle yet threatening. "Our dance has just begun." With a sudden rush, I pivoted to flee, my heart pounding in my chest, but the earth beneath me erupted again, breathing life into the darkness, igniting the very ground I stood upon. The flames roared, casting the tormented faces of the souls into bitter relief, their eyes burning with an unquenched desire for freedom but also with fury, a fury directed at me. I stumbled back, urging my legs to move, but the shadows solidified, reaching for me with sinister intent. Just as a skeletal hand grasped my ankle, a low, thunderous growl erupted from the depths of the earth, vibrating through my bones, threatening to crush me under the weight of their malice. "Flee or join us." The shadows bellowed in unison, a terrifying invitation that trembled through every fiber of my being, and just as I turned to find an escape, something shifted behind me, a creature emerging from the abyss that wouldn't let me leave this realm of lost souls and despair. The presence looming beneath burnt bright and hungry, and the shadows cried out for me to embrace my fate. And with that realization crashing over me, I turned to face the creature emerging from the depths, a grotesque parody of hope, and in its haunting gaze, I saw not salvation but my end. The creature loomed before me, a grotesque fusion of darkness and light, sinewy limbs covered in what appeared to be oily shadows fighting over a surface of pale skin that pulsed like a newly revealed wound. It stood on two legs, but its arms stretched impossibly long, gnarled fingers extending towards me like branches on a dead tree, promising only decay. A face obscured by the tangled mass of darkness twisted into something grotesque, the features wavering like quicksilver, eternally shifting, never settling into recognition. I was paralyzed, not from fear but from an overwhelming sense of nihilism that gripped my soul. Within the twisting visage, I saw fleeting glimpses of my past, Miriam's face smiling sincerely at me, then contorting into rage, my mother, her eyes pleading, followed by the visages of people I had wronged. Each flicker of recognition twisted like a knife in my heart, tightening the noose around my sanity. "I have what you seek." The creature's voice rippled through the air, wrapping around my throat with a chilling caress. My mind screamed to turn away, to flee back into the suffocating darkness, yet it beckoned me closer, claws scraping against the roots of the trees as if sensing my every trepidation. "Don't you want her back?" Miriam's face twisted in my memory, her laughter mixing with the symphony of anguished wails that filled the air. Hope dangled like bait on a hook, ensnaring me further into the nightmare. What price would I pay to bring her back? The thought slithered through my mind, poisonous and seductive, "I'll give you what you desire." The creature stepped forward, a cascade of shadows spilling from its form and pooling at my feet, warm and inviting. "But you must first confront what lingers in the depths of your heart, the burdens that drag you down, the sins that have shaped you." The ground trembled violently, and I felt the echoes of countless lives trapped beneath, the pounding of their hearts reverberating through the earth like war drums signaling a coming clash. The shadows around me tightened, drawing closer as whispers turned to frantic cries, "Accept our invitation, remember how it felt to be alive." I squeezed my eyes shut, clenching my fists against a rising tide of sorrow that threatened to drown me. Through the cacophony, I remembered the box, the artifact I had unearthed from the cellar that had drawn me to this cursed place. It seemed almost childlike, scintillating with the promise of forgotten joy and those ancient, yearning souls. "Find it, embrace your truth," the creature whispered, its voice wrapping tenderly around the edges of my despair. "You don't have to fight. No one else can save you." As if compelled by unseen hands, I turned despite an instinctual urge to flee, inching towards the glimmers of dim light beneath the roots. The senses that had once suffocated me were now ignited mercilessly, as I stumbled through entwined moss and vines, the whispers growing louder, a feverish chorus urging me onward. But as desperation clawed at my rear, the shadows began to coalesce around me, linking arms to form an impenetrable barrier. Panic surged, drowning any notion of patience or lucidity. Breathe, I told myself, but breaths turned to gasps as the surrounding darkness twisted and coiled, eager to reclaim me. Within the murky haze, I caught sight of a fluttering figure near the base of a gnarled tree, a scarf, tattered and frayed but unmistakably familiar, adorned with a pattern that mirrored my childhood home. My heart raced, hope igniting the fog of despair that threatened to consume me. Miriam! I gasped, reaching for the scarf. As my fingers brushed against its worn edges, the world cracked open, everything froze around me as bone-chilling laughter erupted from the depths of the shadows. I could feel their anger, their hunger, the very essence of their torment seeped into my soul, mixing with my own, foolish child. Echoed the voices, weaving tightly around me like chains. You think your past can be undone. With each exhalation, I could feel the tumultuous energy building, the spirits thrumming to life and the walls of despair closing in. The earth beneath trembled even more violently, as if it were a beast awakening from slumber. The voices crescendoed to a fever pitch, melding into a singular shriek. I could feel my heartbeat syncing with theirs, each beat echoing doom. Just as I grasped the scarf, a shadowy arm reached out, piercing through the ethereal veil that separated my reality from this realm of horrors. The familiar laughter of Miriam morphed into something sinister. You can't leave. The shadows roared, and in a blinding flash of darkness, the ground beneath me cracked, revealing a void, the endless maw of the abyss, flaring open wide to swallow me whole. I barely registered the fear surging in my veins as I was being yanked downward, the silence becoming deafening. Grasping desperately at the scarf, a shocking realization dawned on me, but it was too late. With a final, haunting cry, I was thrown into the darkness, into the depths where time ceased to exist, the eternal reflection of my own choices, my own failures, and the specter of what I had sought to escape entwined with what I never should have pursued. And then, with the weight of despair crushing against me, I opened my eyes to a glimmer of hope whispering in the shadows. But this time, it was not my own. I wasn't alone in my descent. Something else lingered alongside me, its agonizing breath brushing against my skin, reminding me that this was only the beginning of a much darker journey. The abyss breathed, and I was just another sacrifice waiting to be claimed. I drifted in the void, my senses twisted, as if reality's fabric unraveled to reveal seething blackness beneath. The whispers were no longer just echoes, they morphed into a cacophony of agony and longing, a thousand lamentations clawing at the corners of my mind. It was a drenched tapestry composed of broken dreams, and I was a single thread, frail and fraying at the edges. Your journey begins anew, a voice hissed, sharper than glass breaking in the silence. It danced through the shadows like a wisp of smoke, wrapping around my consciousness before dissipating into a fitful sigh. I braced myself against the oppressive darkness, every fiber of my being urging me to break free from its suffocating grasp. As I steadied my breathing, I felt the remnants of the scarf clutched tightly in my hand. Its texture was familiar, and though I had long believed it to be lost, it now pulsed with a faint warmth. I thought of Miriam, of the moments shared in laughter and sorrow, and I wished fervently for her presence. My desperation heightened with every passing moment beneath the surface. I could almost feel the echoes of our past drawing me closer. Just as the shadows began to recede, I felt an ominous presence lurk nearby. The air grew thick, charged with a strange electricity that made the hairs on my neck stand on end. I turned, desperately searching for the source, but there were only shifting tendrils of darkness that refused to form a coherent shape, a mass of writhing energy almost sentient in its intent. Please, show yourself, I stammered, the trembling of my voice betraying my fear. The shadows shifted in response, and as the air stirred, a specter materialized before me, a face shrouded in darkness, eyes glowing like fading stars, each blink threatening to snuff out the light within my mind. Welcome, seeker of truth, it crooned, the voice dripping with mockery. You believe you can reclaim your past? You are far too late. Each word hung heavily, and I felt the weight of ages pressing down upon me, filling the chasm with the scent of decay and despair. Who are you? I demanded, fighting to hold on to the tattered remnant of my sanity. What do you want? We are the children of regret, it whispered, and the shadows thickened around it, morphing into grotesque visage-lost souls trapped in a cycle of torment, each face a promise of misery intertwined with the fabric of my own failings. And you are merely our latest prisoner. Suddenly, the landscape shifted, and I was plunged into a frenzy of memories, images replayed like a shattered film reel. I saw Miriam smiling, then crying. I witnessed moments of joy rapidly overshadowed by a growing abyss of guilt. The twisted paths of our lives intertwined violently. It was intoxicating yet suffocating, weaving a horrifying narrative of heartbreak. The laughter of children drifted in the air, bright and hollow, taunting me with each sorrowful note. But there was something darker lurking within the laughter, an ominous tension that caused my heart to stutter. I felt a horde of envious spirits drawing closer, their whispers sharpening into screeches, drowning out the innocent sounds. You want her back, dear seeker? Surrender yourself to us, the entity crooned, reaching out with skeletal fingers, almost pleadingly. The air shimmered around its palm, distorting the reality into a swirling vortex of despair. Embrace your darkness, and she may yet return. My instincts screamed against its invitation, logical thoughts tumbling into the vortex of fear. I could feel my sanity thinning, every desire tugging me closer to the precipice. I would not be consumed. Shaking my head, I closed my eyes. I refuse. The laughter turned to wailing, a sound so soul-crushing it jarred the very bones of my existence. Foolish child, you think you can resist? The wails transformed into a timeless roar, and like thunder crashing across the expanse of my mind, the shadows surged, enveloping me in a violent whirlpool of anguish. The scarf burned in my grasp, releasing fragments of memory, Miriam's touch, her scent, the warmth of her embrace. I felt the tendrils of despair fray against the current, and desperately I screamed her name, clutching the scarf tighter. I won't let you take her away from me. In response, the vortex shuddered violently, shadows writhed and twisted into a frenzied storm. I was hurled into an onslaught of visions, the faces of the lost crowding around me, the very air thickening with their torment. Their fingers clawed toward my throat, grasping at my essence, seeking to claim what little strength remained, and then with one agonizing gasp, everything fell silent. I opened my eyes amidst the void and found one final visage before me, a crumpled figure hunched low, fear etched into every contour of its face. I recoiled, realization striking like a bolt of lightning. Miriam? I choked out, but a bone-chilling reply echoed through the abyss. You shouldn't have come back. As the shadows coalesced around her, an uncanny truth slithered through me, igniting the fear within my chest. Miriam was here, trapped, but so was I, ensnared in this haunting realm where every moment morphed with regret, where memories twisted like a predator closing in for the kill, and the shadows were not merely a veil but an insatiable hunger that demanded to be fed. And amidst the horror tightening around us, her whispered plea echoed in my mind, a dissonance threading through the chaos. I sensed that our fates were bound. The creature's laughter rolled around us, promising much more than I was prepared to face. Before I could process what lay ahead, the ground cracked once more, a dark chasm opening beneath us, poised to swallow me deeper into a nightmare where I might finally discover the price of my desires. The thundering pulse of the shadows crescendoed as I felt the tug of the abyss once more, the final cliff into an uncertain fate looming ahead. Don't let go, I shouted, reaching for Miriam's hand. But just as we bridged the divide, a shadowed maw opened before might beckoned, hungry and insatiable, ready to consume all that I held dear. What price will you pay? The shadows roared as everything plunged into darkness, and my heart raced as I found myself teetering on the brink, the impending doom screaming for my surrender. There was no escape. And I knew, truly knew, that this was only the beginning of a much darker journey. The darkness swallowed us whole, the breath of the void encasing us like a shroud. As my heart raced, I felt the specter of despair reach for me again, clawing at the remnants of my resolve. What price will you pay? it echoed, a sinister chant reverberating off unseen walls as I dangled above an endless chasm, Miriam's hand slipping ever so slowly from my grasp. "Hold on. I'm coming," I shouted, my voice barely a whisper against the cacophony of shadows surrounding us. But the ichor of despair seeped into my soul, dampening my spirit as I fought to reclaim her. The darkness around us thickened, swirling as tendrils rose like serpents to ensnare us both. Miriam's face was distorted by flickers of light and shadow, her features momentarily clear amidst the encroaching gloom. "You have to let them take you," she urged, anguish etched into her voice, though whether it was fear for me or resigned acceptance of our fate, I could not tell. "No," I cried out, helplessness clawing at my chest. "I won't abandon you." But as I watched her, each blink of her eyes seemed to dim, as though her very light could be snuffed out with the next flicker. I fought against the gravity pulling me downward, but the shadows groaned in answer, hungry to claim what was theirs. The laughter of the damned spiraled around us, wrapping me in its ghostly arms, filling my ears with a horrific sonata. It was a tune of abandonment and betrayal, playing with the broken strings of memories lodged within my mind. The faces of the lost twisted into grotesque figures, reaching for me, mouths contorting with a haunting chorus that seeped into my bones. Let them take your darkness," the distorted voice coiled around the wailing chorus. "In return, you may yet find what you seek." Doubt clawed at my insides. What would surrender mean? What horrors would it extract from my soul, and could I bear to lose Miriam to this hellish abyss? My heart thudded heavily in my chest as I struggled against the tide of yearning and despair. Take my shadows, my failures, my pain. I found myself yelling into the void, desperation pouring from my lips, as if by offering my darkness I could protect her light. Just let her go. But the shadows only laughed, cruel and chaotic, and I understood then that they desired more than just my pain, they sought my very essence, the core of who I had been. Miriam's grip slackened, her eyes wide with frozen terror as she began to slip away. I leaned forward, desperation overwhelming my senses. A screech echoed above, and a deep, cavernous growl rolled like thunder from the depths of the erupting chasm. The ground trembled violently beneath us, splitting further, revealing gaping fathoms of ancient, writhing darkness, the very heart of this accursed domain. "Join us," the voice crooned, softer now, almost seductive amidst the chaos. "Surrender your heart, and you shall find her." No. I gasped, but Miriam's face contorted in anguish as her form began to disintegrate, particles of shadow and light swirling around her like fireflies lost in the night. "Don't leave me," I yelled, my voice carried away into the suffocating void. In one frantic motion, I thrust my hand deeper into the chasm, desperate to reclaim her. The darkness gripped my wrist with a cold, iron hold. I closed my eyes, picturing her smile, the warmth of her laughter burning brightly in my mind, a beacon against the foreboding silence. Let the end begin. The shadows howled, their voices rising to a fever pitch, a tempest of anguish swirling within the abyss. I felt the weight of the souls around me, caught between the desire to pull me in and a fear of what lay beyond, and then it happened. A searing pain lanced through my wrist, binding me to the darkness as I frantically grappled with the flickering essence of Miriam's fading form. Her features melded with the shadows, eyes pleading and filled with a burgeoning dread. My heart clenched tight as the realization dawned. This realm had no mercy, no compassion, only an endless hunger for despair. "You do not belong here," I gasped fiercely, summoning all the remaining strength I could muster, my voice rising against the howling winds of torment. I could feel the threads of my existence fraying, my connection to Miriam slipping like sand through an hourglass. Suddenly, the ground split open wider, and I felt the pull of the abyss drag at my very core, its insatiable desire intensifying with terrifying speed. I narrowed my gaze, locking my eyes onto hers, unyielding in my determination. "We will not be lost," I screamed, the power of our memories igniting through the growing haze of shadows. Miriam's silhouette flickered, her essence beginning to dissolve, and I plunged my free hand deep into the depths of the chasm, fighting against the torrid current. I would either save her, or the darkness would claim us both, but I would not let go without a fight. But just as our eyes connected for what felt like the last time, the shadows exploded around us, and I was hurled backward, free from the seductive grasp. In that moment of reprieve, I screamed, "Miriam!" As darkness collapsed upon itself, and a deafening roar enveloped the dying echoes of her name, all went black, engulfed by a silence so profound it ripped through me like a knife. I fell into a haunting stillness, the kind of silence that screamed of loss and regret. And then, amidst the dark void, I heard her voice, "Help me before it's too late." The chilling whisper was a mere breath away, resonating from the depths of despair and terror. I stood on the precipice of darkness, waiting for the shadows to reveal their next ghastly truth, and I had no way of knowing which reality awaited me next. The breath of the abyss echoed around me, a chilling caress that froze the marrow in my bones. I blinked against the oppressive darkness, but instead of releasing me, the quiet thickened, suffocating. I took a step back, my foot sliding on a surface that felt as though it pulsed with a life of its own, slick and quivering. Heart pounding, I squinted into the oppressive gloom, certain I could still hear Miriam's voice emanating from the shadows, a wraith-like thread weaving a tapestry of despair, "Help me." The whisper ghosted around me, rippling like water. It wasn't just a plea, it was a summons, drawing me towards a fate I wasn't ready to accept. I steeled myself, forcing my feet forward, unsteady but resolute. Around me, the faint luminescence of something lurked just beyond my sight, a glimmer, an echo of horror I hadn't yet encountered. Each step clicked sharply against the obsidian terrain, which pulsed in rhythm with the unholy heartbeat of the void beneath. A cacophony of whispers began to rise, curling through my mind like vines around a trellis, their discordant murmurs tugging on my consciousness, each one tugging the veil of sanity tighter and tighter. "Find us," the voices beckoned, a thrumming symphony of despair and longing. "We can show you the way to save her." The imagery they conjured pressed against the back of my eyelids, terrifying visions of etched grins, of submerged eyes beneath the surface of black water, shadows twisting into grotesque interpretations of those I had lost. My mind recoiled, but the specter of hope calmed the turmoil. Would I find a way to restore her? Each question birthed more questions, reeling me further into uncertainty. Ahead, faint forms began to appear, flickering like candle flames lost in a tempest. I stumbled closer, realizing that they were Shepesno, souls, trapped in the very fabric of this labyrinthine nightmare. They beckoned to me, fingers clawing at the air as though trying desperately to grasp any thread of salvation. Their faces shifted between recognition and torment, mouths forming silent screams as they twisted in the darkness, caught in their eternal dance of anguish. Do you see? A voice howled from the shadows, acidic and rich with malice. "They are the price of your quest. They seek your heart, your past. Just like you, they once longed for freedom." "Stop!" I cried out, recoiling at the realization that these phantoms were once like lost souls entrapped by their own failures and despair, each bearing witness to the death of their hope. "This isn't right!" I shouted, resolving to free them, as I moved deeper into the suffocating shadows, dodging grasping hands that blurred into hemmed memories. Then, out of the murky depths of the void, a bright flash erupted, illuminating the horrors surrounding me in a blinding brilliance. I squinted against the light, and as my vision cleared, I saw a locket clasped tightly in a skeletal hand, its surface intricately engraved with a soft image of Miriam smiling, vibrant, and whole. The locket pulsed, its radiance blinding the consuming darkness, and, suddenly, the tendrils of shadows recoiled, writhing as if burned by its warmth. "You will release what you hold dear," the voice coiled from the mass of darkness, cold and biting, as a figure began to materialize from the gloom, draped in shadows, terror incarnate. This figure was monstrous, shifting and writhing, eyes glimmering with maleficence. "Surrender your essence, and perhaps you'll find peace in this chaos, or be forever bound with the remnants of those you failed. No. I lashed out, propelled by an instinct buried somewhere deep within. "You will not take me." With a ferocity I didn't know resided within me, I lunged for the locket, feeling the pulse quicken under my grasp. As I closed my fingers around it, a wave of warmth surged through me, washing over the freezing despair that clung to the air. But as I did, the shadows writhed violently, a cacophony of anguished cries filling the silence. The tortured souls joined in a chorus, and suddenly, the darkness thickened, swirling with Mind of its own, its hunger forgetting me in its frenzy to reclaim what had been drawn toward the light, Miriam. I screamed as the vortex of shadows surged to reclaim the locket from me, dragging my newly summoned hope into its depths, but then, amidst the tumult, a familiar voice cut through a crisp beacon through a storm. You chose me. Her words echoed fiercely, igniting every fragmented part of my spirit. And suddenly, a terrible shrieking wail erupted, not from the souls trapped in torment, nor from the eldritch horror looming before me, but from behind, from the depths of the chasm opening wider than I had ever seen before. The very ground trembled beneath me, and as fear surged, I spun, heart in my throat, to see something moving beneath the jagged rocks, leaned furtively towards the light engulfing me. Something vast and insatiable, a creature birthed from the very strands of darkness, eyes glowing with primal hunger, its maw impossibly wide, stretching to swallow whatever spark of hope remained, and with a sudden jerk, I found myself teetering on the edge of the abyss. The chasm expanded, unfurling like the jaws of a beast hungry for the last rays of hope. The locket threatened to slip from my grasp, the balance between light and darkness teetering dangerously, as the howling torrent surged around me. Help me! Miriam's voice screamed from the distance, an echo of love mixed with the terror of the approaching maw, and I realized with paralyzing horror whatever I chose next would not just seal my fate, but hers as well. The undeniable choice lingered in the air thick with dread, and as the darkness spread, I felt the pull of the abyss tighten around my ankles. How much longer until the final decision fell away, and all hope turned to ash? I was lost within an ocean of darkness, the thick atmosphere pressing down on me, relentless, suffocating. Whispers filled my mind, twisting and turning until they bled seamlessly into each author, a cacophony of regret, yearning, and malevolence. It was as if the shadows themselves were alive, tantalizing me with the promise of Miriam's return, yet tethering me to the very depths of despair. Help me, her voice beckoned again, a soft lament that both terrified and invigorated me, a reminder of everything worth saving. That I stepped forward, desperate to disentangle myself from the suffocating miasma of shadows clawing at my sanity. I will find you, Miriam. My voice was a claw scraping against the invisible walls around me, fighting to break free. But as I strained against the oppressive weight of the darkness, dread coiled tighter in my chest, and just as the fog seemed to lift for a fleeting moment, I was pulled beneath the surface once more, the shadows shifting like a living tapestry. Suddenly, a skeletal hand grasped my wrist, yanking me deeper into the void, tugging on my very essence. The hand felt familiar, almost tender, but with it came the weight of their anguish, 1,000 regrets smothering me beneath their collective despair. I struggled, but the shadows only clawed harder, subtle yet insatiable, trying to turn me into one of them, a prisoner encased in endless sorrow. Let her go! I screamed, fighting against the grip that threatened to engulf me. The faces emerged, distant memories etched in despair, and Miriam's visage flickered among them, radiant amidst their cursed forms. Her eyes, wide and tear-streaked, locked onto mine as the haze of darkness wrapped around us, tugging me closer to an inevitable demise. Release them. Release us, the souls wailed, their voices a haunting symphony. In exchange, you shall have her back. A sickly sweet temptation mingled with my desperation, growing louder, more insistent. But I could feel the truth in my heart, a promise made to her when we were lost together in light. I would never leave her. With renewed determination, I surged against the tide of shadows, rivulets of light radiating from within me, illuminating the chaos around us. Yet, as I surged forward, the overwhelming darkness roared in anger, and my path twisted into a spiral of terror. You will never escape, it hissed, a chorus of lost souls pulling tighter, a visceral grip that wrapped around my soul. Stop! I bellowed with everything I had left, the specter of choice heavy in the air. I will not trade her for my life. In that moment, a pulse of warmth blossomed in my chest, and a vision of Miriam whole and alive filled my mind. It strengthened me, a tether to the love I refused to abandon. Fight! Echoed my own voice, a rallying cry against the tide of shadows. You are not my captor. The mechanical laughter of the darkness drowned out as the pulse thickened, reverberating against the walls of this nightmare. A wave of light surged forth, a raw energy that pushed back the encroaching gloom. And there, at the heart of that beam, I caught a glimpse of Miriam, her form shimmering, pulled away from the abyss, drawn forth by the bright tendrils of my determination. "Help me," she whispered again, but now the dark edges of despair twisted her voice, threading through my core like an agonizing reminder of our bond. "Before it's too late." No. I cried out, feeling the sacrificial pull of the shadows aiming to drag us both back into the pit. "I will save you." The words rallied against the encroaching tide, a desperate vow that strained before the maw of darkness. With a final, powerful surge, fueled by the love I held for her, I extended my other hand into the blinding light. Wisps of hope spiraled around us, forming a cocoon of brilliance that pushed back the shadows just enough to create a fleeting tether. I grabbed for her, fingers stretching, reaching, and then, at that moment, everything shattered. The ground beneath erupted, spilling forth a torrent of anguished wails and laments, and the shadows writhed violently. The glowing warmth faded to gray, plunging me back into the void, a torrent of despair flooding all around us. The weight of the spirits pressed down, snarling as they resisted the light, and I felt the loneliness surge back, swirling in an inescapable bind that I grasped for her, the darkness gripping my ankles like iron. "Miriam!" I cried. "Let go!" She pleaded. "Before it drags you down with me." I hesitated, panic swelled in my chest. "No. I won't abandon you." I fought against the tide, but the shadows laughed, drawing tight around her essence. The spectral entities gathered around me, eyes gleaming with malicious glee. "You are the key. Join us," they urged, their voices rising in a terrible chorus. "We promise solace in despair. Surrender your heart. We will take the burden." I was losing her, I could feel it, feel the heart-wrenching pull as she faded slowly from view. Shadows surged, resolve weakening, determination wavering. Me heart pounded against its cage, the choices of both our fate screaming for resolution. Would I forsake everything for the mere chance of saving her? "Hold on, please." My voice cracked, desperation clawing at my throat. The pressure of endless regret bore down upon me, and as I stood before the abyss, I suddenly realized the damning truth: the darkness offered no salvation. She was bound to it as I was, entwined in a dance of despair that would never end. And then, amidst the whispers, something shifted. A fleeting moment of realization sparked an understanding that resonated in the depths of my soul. "Miriam!" I shouted, tears blurring my vision. Her name echoed like a desperate war cry. "You are not your fears." In an instant, the shadows hissed, recoiling as if struck. The darkness quivered, the echoes of regret vibrating fiercely before me, and the visions of the lost fled from the glint of my shining fury. I realized the ultimate price of my freedom, to let go of the pain off my guilt and embrace hope. With that clarity igniting my spirit, I closed my eyes and drew in a sharp breath, focusing on the light within. "I will not choose despair," I declared forcefully, channeling every ounce of will into that singular thought. The shadows roared, a cacophony of fury echoing in the void, rising in a tumultuous wave as the ground split deeper. But the light pulsed, bursting forth from my soul, carving my path out of darkness, a beacon cutting through the blackness that choked us both. "Find me," she whispered, the grip of shadows quivering around my soul, but then got twisted in confusion, and suddenly the abyss opened wide, revealing a final truth. And in that moment, a rending scream erupted from the depths, a deafening roar of rage, and for the first time I saw the intense light forming between us, as if the universe itself had joined my cry. I wrenched my hand free from the suffocating shadows, and with a final surge of strength, I reached for her one last time. The darkness writhed, seething with malevolent energy, threatening to pull us both down into oblivion. Yet, I felt it shift, the barrier between us weakening. "Hold on!" I shouted, my voice echoing against the cold walls of despair. The light surged, wrapping around me, around her, and with each pulse, I grasped hope tighter, igniting more power against the shadows. Closer, closer, until finally our fingers touched. Suddenly, a blinding flash engulfed us both. When the light finally subsided, I opened my eyes beneath the sprawling branches of the forest, radiance pouring through the leaves, illuminating the sense of tranquility that surrounded me. Tiny specks of dust danced in the warm sunlight, and in that moment of serenity, I could feel her presence beside me. Miriam? I gasped, incredulity spilling over as she stood there, vibrant and whole, her smile effervescent. But as I embraced her, that warmth faded, and the world around us shifted, dark cracks appearing in the tranquil grove, a reminder that we were never truly free from the shadows we had escaped. Not yet, she whispered, voice tinged with an edge of concern, tracing her finger along my jawline. But I will find you again, and when I do. The shadows crept slowly behind her, wrapping around her like ribbons of past memories. The air chilled, and shivers climbed my spine as I felt a flicker of dread looming beneath our solace. I stepped back, horror dawning as I realized the darkness had returned, perhaps even stronger than before. Now, what do you mean? What did we? But before I could understand the depths of that sorrow, the whispers returned, swirling into a deafening crescendo, enveloping us both and pulling me back into the void. And as the last remnants of light flickered, the chilling truth broke over me like ice. We had escaped the chains of despair only to become the next piece in the game of lost souls swirling beneath the surface of nightmares. And in the inescapable grip of shadows, as darkness consumed everything, I realized the terrible truth: this was not the end, the madness had only just begun.